Chapter 4. The king's army was divided into sections, each with a leader who answered to the head trooper, who was in charge of the whole army, and he in turn took his orders from the king. Each section contained 100 male soldiers. Females were not enlisted as soldiers. Instead, they were enlisted as sword, axe and armour makers, cooks and nurses. Section 10 was run by a mophead called Seltrekmore, a leader now, but he had been a soldier for many years. Seltrekmore was inside his tent talking with one of his men when a messenger arrived and requested that he meet with the head trooper immediately. Seltrekmore, like all the other leaders, had been instrumental in the surrender of Amazonia to the new king and his rule. It had not been that difficult, as the Amazonians were a peaceful folk, but the mopheads had still used a heavy hand to ensure that their rule was taken seriously. Seltrekmore grabbed his sword and walked to the head trooper's tent. His name was Champin, and he was a mighty warrior. "Sir, you summoned me," said Seltrekmore. "Indeed I did," said Champin, cracking a menacing smile. Champin rolled out a map. Mapmakers had been busy drawing plans of Amazonia. They were all very basic, as they had only been there for a few months, but that had been long enough to make enough progress to help the soldiers read the basic lay of the land. Champin pointed at an area of forest on the map that they had called Alpha Section. "You need to take your men to this forest tomorrow and clear it. We need a large supply of wood for the king's castle and to reinforce the perimeter fence. Further building of the soldiers' accommodation will continue once this has been completed. Cut all the trees down and have them moved to this area here," said Champin, as he used his sword to point at an allocated space where hundreds of trees had already been cut down. "Do you have any questions?" Are there any Amazonians living in the forest, sir?" "I'm not sure if there are or not. But if there are, I'm sure you can persuade them one way or another to leave," said Champin. "Yes, sir. You have 1 week, so work your men hard and reward will be with you all," continued Champin as he turned his back, signalling for Seltrekmore to leave. He bowed his head and then he left the tent. Seltrekmore was a good man. He was a powerful soldier and a good leader, but he had never lost the quality of heart. He was not without sorrow for what the army and the king had done to the land and its people in Amazonia. He had great respect for his king as well, which made the feelings he experienced quite challenging to process. He made plans to carry out his orders, but at the same time he wished for a peaceful solution to the problem. As with all magic and requests of the heart, when Seltrekmore allowed this emotion to flow through him, unbeknown to him, a stream of light left his heart and fell into the earth. The following morning, Section 10 was called for a meeting and its task was relayed. Everyone was happy to receive their orders, knowing that good food and drink would be their reward. The demise of the balanced, happy environment of Amazonia continued, with 100 men and 100 axes, all cutting down yet more trees. Animals started to run and leave their homes, and some trees started to quiver in the space that they were standing in. Every single one of them knew what was to occur, and nothing could be done about it. Older trees looked at each other and smiled. They had happily shared their lives and would be together again in the sacred land where time does not exist. So they stood in silence as their brothers and sisters were cut, watching and listening to them crash and fall to the ground. What a mighty sound! There is a saying that asks, if no one was in a forest when a tree falls, does it make a sound? But today, there were many in the forest, all listening to the cracking sounds of falling trees. The unseen magic of nature spirits and the loving inhabitants of the forest started running and flying all over the place as their homes were being demolished. Fairies were flying in all directions, and the little folk were running as fast as they could in all directions, and the little folk were running as fast as they could to move out of the way of the mopheads' feet and falling trees. Flowers, grasses, trees and roots all tried to stand their ground as a change occurred around them. After the first day's work, the mopheads marched back to their tents and left quite an eerie sight behind them. The sun had started to set, and the vast areas of the forest had crashed to the floor. Trunks and branches lay like broken bones on the ground. Most of the remaining trees, silhouetted in the pink sky, were silent, but some younger trees were crying and calling out for help. The little folk who were hiding at the edge of the forest came running as soon as the coast was clear of the axe-wielding mopheads. "It's okay," came a little voice. It was Primrose, the fairy, hovering around a young tree who was crying. "No, it's not. My family have been cut and demolished around me. How is that okay?" "They're also coming back in the morning. What would you have me do?" the tree asked in an angry but frightened way. "Is there not some way you could find to walk away from here?" Primrose was full of concern for all the trees. "Do you not think my brothers and sisters would have done this if there was a chance to do so?" "I don't know. I just think we have lived in peace forever and have never thought of anything other than how we live. But who's to say that trees cannot walk?" The little tree smiled and tried to take a step. He made lots of noise as his roots pawed at the earth that had been nurtured him for so long, but nothing happened. The other younger trees tried to do the same, but they too were left standing strong within the earth. Primrose started to shout out, "I know of a magic tree, and he is very wise. I bet he could tell you how to walk, and I'm sure he can help all of us because something needs to be done. If I could only find him in time, but I don't know where he lives. I'll have to go and find my friends. They'll know. But I don't know if there is enough time to save you." Primrose was now flying around in a frenzy as her energy was full of anguish. "It's not just me. What about all the other hundreds of trees here? They say nothing. It's as though they've gone to sleep. They just stand there with their wisdom, content on moving to a place where time does not exist. Why? I don't understand." The little tree scrunched up his face and clenched his branch fists. Primrose flew over to a large older tree. She asked the question that the young tree had asked, but he said nothing. Just then, a female tree spoke. "We have lived as a forest for thousands of years, and nothing else we are. We love our life here, but at the same time we do not fear death, and we do not fear change," she said, offering her wisdom to those who would listen. "Well, I do, and I don't want to die." "What about all you other young ones? Do you agree with me?" asked the little tree. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So please help, save us all," came a flow of voices through the remaining forest. The older trees just smiled and allowed the younger ones to live out their dreaming. "I have an idea for now. I can make all of you invisible. That way you have a chance to stay alive. All you need to do is make sure that any trees around you that have chosen to do nothing do not crash into you when they're cut, or that any mopheads can feel you," said Primrose, buzzing with excitement. "Oh, only that then?" "Well, it's the best I can do for now. I'll go for help. I need to find Old Rook and Wise Owl. They'll know what to do and where to find the wise tree. By the way, what is your name, little tree?" "Well, up until now I've not had a name, but you calling me little tree is not very helpful with all that is about to happen. I need a bigger name. I think you can call me Elmer from now on. Elmer means courage." "Okay, Elmer. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Primrose, and I look forward to our epic journey ahead." She then waved her fairy dust all over the trees that wanted to try and save themselves and said the following spell. "Into the world of unseen dreams, all of you who are seen to be in the here and now, take a breath and disappear and live for a while without a fear." Once the words were spoken, everyone who wanted to disappeared. Primrose laughed and singed and was for a moment really happy with her magic. Then she remembered the task ahead of her. She called out goodbye to everyone, wished them good luck, and then flew off into the twilight. The following morning, Section 10 were back in the forest with their axes, and it was everyone for themselves. The devastation went on for days until the forest was clear, or so they thought. A large number of young trees had managed to survive and were still within the earth of Amazonia. Elmer had taken it upon himself to keep all the other younger trees as calm as possible and felt that it was up to him now to save his brothers and sisters. So for now, they would invest their energies into faith and trust and believe that Primrose would return with help.